ICE's Office of the Principal Legal Advisor, upon whose advice and counsel we rely on every day enforcing the law. I'm here today to talk about the local enforcement cooperation with ICE. As you probably know, there are a number of jurisdictions across the country that are resisting cooperation with ICE. I came here today because such resistance impacts your community, Mecklenburg County, here in North Carolina. I want to talk to you about what ICE does and why. I want to share my thoughts on the impact local sanctuary policies have on you as a community member. I'm sure you have always thought of your community as a sanctuary. In a way, it's your home. You hope for the safety, security, and well-being of your families, your children, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. You expect us, your law enforcement community, to foster that for you. As a career law enforcement officer, I want to underscore one thing. The enforcement of federal immigration law is not new. Just as we did under prior administrations, ICE officers continue to carry out their sworn duties with professionalism and integrity. As law enforcement officers, we live in the communities where we work. Like you, we want the best for our communities. We take pride in our role in guaranteeing your safety and security, and also in upholding the integrity of laws we signed up for to enforce. I also watch the news and read the newspapers, and I see what activists and some local officials have been saying to you about ICE. I know that there's a lot of miscommunication out there. Actually, misinformation out there. My sense is that this misinformation is spread intentionally to mislead and to create fear and skepticism, not only about ICE, but about law enforcement in general, including law enforcement agencies that work collaboratively with ICE. Here's what I want you to know. An immigration detainer is a tool available under federal law that serves two purposes. First, it alerts another law enforcement agency who has arrested someone for a crime that ICE has probable cause to believe that a person is subject to removal from the United States under our immigration laws. Second, it asks that the agency to maintain custody of that alien for just a brief period of time to enable us to take custody in the safe, secure, and discreet settings of the jail, rather than at large in the local community. Well, not only does Mecklenburg County not honor detainers, the Sheriff's Office refuses to notify ICE when releasing an alien from custody following their criminal arrest, even with the person having prior convictions for serious crimes. The consequences of that policy to Mecklenburg County residents should concern you. When a detainer is refused, an individual who's illegally present in the United States and has gone on to commit a crime or many crimes walks back into your neighborhoods. Having learned the clear lesson that abiding by laws in North Carolina is optional for aliens, rather than an obligation that all members of a community share. Detainer non-cooperation is dangerous and is reckless. Under your sheriff, ICE is often not even aware a criminal alien is back in the community until that individual is rearrested for another crime, which ICE could have prevented if we'd been given a chance to do our job and take custody of the alien as allowed under federal law. I believe that law enforcement should stand united when it comes to public safety. We should use the tools we have to protect this community. That's just common sense. Keep Charlotte safe from criminals above politics. Further, if Mecklenburg County Sheriff claims that refusing to cooperate with ICE will result in a decrease in local immigration enforcement, he is mistaken. ICE will continue making at-large arrests. After all, if we can't find criminal aliens who we are sworn to remove from the United States in a county jail, we are duty-bound to seek them out in the community to which they have been released. ICE making more at-large arrests means the agency is likely to encounter other unlawfully present aliens. What sanctuary proponents fail to recognize is that we probably wouldn't have even encountered those individuals had we been allowed to take custody of the criminal target within the confines of the local jail. ICE does not claim that most illegal aliens commit crimes in the United States. I'm here today not to promote fear, but just like the general population, there is a portion that does commit crimes. And ICE targets those people for arrest. Despite what you may hear, we do not conduct indiscriminate raids. We do not use roadblocks or checkpoints to conduct immigration enforcement. We prioritize our arrests, for example, by targeting criminals, including sex offenders and threats to public safety. This is simple common sense. This week, the dedicated women and men of ICE conducted a targeted intelligence-based at-large criminal alien operation. Many of the subjects we were pursuing have been released from uncooperative sanctuary jurisdictions. Of the nearly 1,300 at-large arrests made this week across the nation, our officers arrested nearly 200 people who would have been arrested at a local jail if our detainers would have been honored. Here in Mecklenburg County, we targeted 70 criminal aliens for arrest this week. 27 of those targets were aliens who should have been off the streets had ICE previously lodged a detainer with Mecklenburg County, but the sheriff office ignored it. Instead, the sheriff office chose to let the criminal offenders walk out of their back door and onto the streets of Charlotte. Our ICE officers were able to locate and arrest 32 criminal aliens in Mecklenburg County this week. Of those, 12 were Mecklenburg County were previously refused our detainer. They could have been, all 27 of those could have been arrested in the secure setting of a jail. Instead, nearly 15 of those, 20 of those, are walking free in this community. While I commend the great work of our officers this week to locate and arrest these criminals, Charlotte residents should be aware numerous criminal offenders remain at large that we couldn't find and couldn't arrest. Those criminal aliens remain in your community where they are free to commit more crimes, all because the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office chose to knowingly and willingly release a criminal back into the community instead of calling ICE. Now let me give you just one clear specific example of how the sheriff's policies are failing the community. Earlier this year, an illegal alien was arrested for driving while intoxicated. ICE lodged the detainer, but it was ignored. In June of this year, that same alien was again arrested, but this time it was for 2 counts of assault on a female, assault by strangulation, assault with a deadly weapon, and another DUI. We lodged the detainer again, and it was ignored. Mecklenburg County released him from custody. Hopefully, we find him before he potentially hurts or kills another victim. This is just one case. I could talk about numerous others in the U.S. illegally who can and should be in custody for removal after committing crimes in Mecklenburg County. This year alone, about 250 detainers have been lodged against aliens in Mecklenburg County, and all of them have been released into your community. As a community member, those numbers probably aren't just statistics to you. Each refused detainer represents a person who criminally arrested by a law enforcement officer for a crime that had nothing to do with their immigration status and then came back into your community. Due to this reckless policy enacted by your sheriff, Mecklenburg County residents are less safe today than they were a year ago. This situation is untenable for you, the community. While disagreement about federal immigration law is fair, what is happening in Mecklenburg County is not. Law enforcement officials have an obligation to protect safety in their communities. That's why I get out of my bed every morning. The policies of this Mecklenburg County Sheriff run counter to that obligation. I'd be happy to answer a few questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
From May 2018 to May 2019, ICE has been issuing about 6% fewer detainers nationwide. Here in North Carolina, in the past 5 years, between 2014 and 2019, ICE has been issuing about 10% fewer detainers. So let me give you an example. In North Carolina, in Mecklenburg County Detention Center North, in April 2009, ICE issued 273 detainers. In April 2018, before the new sheriff, ICE issued just 3 detainers. So my question is, why are you defending so passionately this tool that you guys are using less?
Well, actually, so we issue detainers on anybody that is placed into custody, arrested for a crime in the community that is illegal in this country, or we have probable cause to believe that is illegal in this country. The reality is if one person is ultimately released that we could have taken custody of and they commit crimes in your community, to me, that's too much. We're talking 250 people have been released this year. 250 that could potentially, and the stats will speak for themselves. About 50% will actually recommit crimes in the community. To me, I live in the community, not Mecklenburg community, but I do not want our local partners releasing criminals into the community that have the potential to prey on our friends, neighbors, family. So I can't speak to why the number is down, but I can tell you, if there's one detainer that walks out the front door that commits a crime against someone in our community, it's too much.
So the sheriff will have a lot of responses to this, and one of the things that the sheriff says is, I don't release them, the judges set bonds. So why aren't we talking more about what's happening in the judicial side of things? So that's one point that I guess I would ask the room. And then my second question would be, if in fact there are people who you have issued detainers on, why aren't there federal warrants too? That's something else that the sheriff is saying, because if there's a warrant, I'll hold them. These are not warrants, these are requests, these are detainers, these are not laws that I'm breaking. So respond to that, because I hear that a lot from him as well.
So these laws aren't new. We've been enforcing immigration law for years. These laws are not new. Every detainer comes with a warrant of arrest. Now, we're talking about administrative warrants versus criminal warrants. There's not a judge in this country that signs and issues a federal warrant for immigration-related crimes. At the end of the day, this is about community safety. This is about criminals that are arrested for a crime. They've already ignored the immigration crime that they're here presently illegally. They're committing crimes in the neighborhood, in your community, and they're walking out the front door to commit more crimes. This is a public safety issue,
So what
plain
he
and
says
simple.
he wants, you all either don't want to give him, I don't know why, if you want these people as bad as you say you do, I have to go get stories, whatever it takes to get them. I can't lay back and expect people to call me with the news. So if the sheriff says, okay, I'm not gonna call you, but if you send me the warrant or whatever the hell of these legal things he says he needs, then you get the guy. Why won't you all sit down with him, figure out how to get him this paperwork he needs, so you can work together and take care of these people?
The reality is this is politics over public safety.
But it's
The
politics on both sides, isn't it?
It isn't. It isn't. We've been enforcing immigration law for years. We provide him with a detainer. It's a recognized form with a warrant of arrest or a final order of removal.
But if that's not working, why aren't you trying to sit down with him or do something? If these are as bad a people as you say they are and as dangerous, the fact that you guys don't want to go get them.
Not only is he not honoring detainers, but he's not even notifying us when somebody is walking out the door. The reality is dangerous criminals are walking out the front door and they're recommitting crimes in the neighborhood, and he can be stopping it. Plain and simple.
There's nothing you can do.
We will
There's nothing I can
continue
do
to,
work
we will
with him
continue
to
to
do
work
it.
with Congress. We will continue to work with the local sheriff. We will be happy to talk with whoever it is when it comes to public safety.
So have you tried
Is
to
he-
address
is-
that to,
I'm sorry.
sorry, have you tried to address that issue to judges instead of being attacked as a sheriff? Because I believe that the problem is with the, I'm not sure if with the judges or with the judicial system in Mecklenburg County, but not the sheriff. So, I'm trying to understand what are you doing now, but
So we continue to work with Congress on legislation. We have the tools that we have within immigration. We continue to work with our law enforcement partners. But this is an administrative warrant with an administrative arrest. We have criminal aliens that are in the country. We have probable cause to believe that they're here illegally, and they're walking out the front door and they're committing crimes in your neighborhood. They're actually committing crimes in the same neighborhoods that you guys are you're trying to protect. The reality is we can make a difference. When it comes to public safety, I don't understand how politics and electability comes in front of public safety. It bothers me.
We have this year more than 87 murders in Charlotte, something that didn't happen since 2000 in the 90s. And I don't recall any of the people that killed the people that were undocumented. And just to refresh the memory of you, when the 287G between February 2006 to the time that you gave the information about daily basis of the detain and the reason for the processing of deportation of the people, there were 11,000 people that were processed for deportation.
Okay.
Only 254 were aggravated felons from 11,000. What you had that the Mecklenburg jail was a machine of deportation of regular people, not criminals. And the happiest day that Charlotte, the Hispanic community in Charlotte had, was the day that Sheriff McFadden decided to communicate the people in Washington that this system didn't go more.
Do you know how many other communities are not participating?
I don't have that number, but there are significant, so there, you know, in Los Angeles, in Cook County, in New York and New Jersey, the reality is these are cities that have significant, you know, number of egregious criminals that are walking out the front door of jails. 70% of our resources are currently spent in the jails, where we can identify a clear, it's a targeted enforcement action. We're walking in, we're identifying that person beforehand, we're picking that person up, placing them into immigration proceedings, and we have the unique ability to remove that person from the community. Now, that number was a lot higher. We had a lot more people working in the confines of the jail, but you know what's happening now is we still have that very difficult responsibility of enforcing immigration law. So now our officers, we're sending more resources into the streets, into the communities, where the potential of them running into someone else that is here in illegally in the country, they're going to run to in a jail in a confined setting. That's not going to happen. So this is us with very limited responsibilities, trying to make sure that we're focusing on national security, public safety, working with our partners in the law enforcement community to make our community safer. Sexual offenders walking out the front door. I'll tell you that I do not want sexual offenders living on the streets with me. And I would guess if you asked most, they do not either.
Can you talk about the timing of this?
Sure.
And can you go through those numbers again that you just cited?
Sure. So we started working on this operation weeks ago. A large operation like this, nationwide operation, takes weeks to plan. The operation commenced a couple days ago. We have press conferences and media that follow large-scale operations. We targeted well over 3,000 cases. We apprehended nearly 1,300 people, and nationally, I think it was somewhere around 70 were from the Mecklenburg area.
One question.
That's, I mean, you're arrested or targeted?
Arrested.
In the last 12 years, ICE has been issuing more detainers to Wayne County than in Mecklenburg. However, we kind of sense that the focus of this criticism is more in Mecklenburg than in other places. So how do you explain that?
So issuing detainers is a color-based system. It's all based on fingerprints. Fingerprints are run, they're run to the FBI. FBI shares the prints. If we have probable cause that person is in the country illegally, we're going to issue a detainer. It's a targeted-based system. So we run the information, the detainer is issued. We have different relationships with sheriffs across the country. Some cooperate more than others. At the end of the day, law enforcement officers, sheriffs alike, wake up in the morning to make their community safer, protect and serve. It's what we do. It's why we do our job. They're not doing it in Mecklenburg County when it comes to those that are in their custody.
Have you requested a sit down with the sheriff? Have you requested?
I have not personally, but I know that we have sat down with him previously.
Are all the 70?
Sorry. Yes, I know what you're saying, and you're right in everything you're saying, but we need to understand that the 28070 program is a volunteer program. So you cannot push anyone to be part of it. You cannot obligate, you cannot force, you cannot try to...
You are 100% correct.
Okay,
So
so my question is here. What is the message you want to send today with this press conference to Sheriff McFadden?
So the message we want to say today is 287G is a fantastic tool. It is a voluntary program. If that is not something that you are interested in, fantastic. But honoring detainers that we ask you for, just detainers and 287G program are completely different. If we issue a detainer and ask you to hold somebody for us to take custody of that individual, and if you can't do that, at least call us and notify us when you're going to release somebody into the community so we can get there. We're willing to work however we can to make sure that at least one criminal doesn't hit the street. We'd prefer all of them.
Of those 70 who were arrested, how many of those were folks you were looking for versus like collateral arrests? Were they all?
I don't have that information in front of me. But there was a collateral arrest made along with our targeted arrest.
So all 70 might not have been people who you had identified that you were looking for? Or?
Possibly. I know that of those of that detainers weren't honored, we identified 27 cases. We were only able to find 12. So that means there's 15 criminals that walked out the front door of Mecklenburg County that are still living in the community.
Could you tell us how detainers work in communities that are cooperating with ICE from the moment a person is arrested?
Absolutely. So once a detainer is issued with that local jurisdiction, we ask for them to notify us upon release and to hold up to 48 hours. Now, in most locations, in most big cities, we have ICE offices within minutes. There's usually not a minute that person spends in custody longer than they normally have to. We show up, we take them into custody. We are not asking our local law enforcement partners to enforce immigration law. That's just not, that's a myth. That's not true. We're asking them to notify us when they're going to release somebody that's been arrested for a crime in their community so we can pick them up. That's it. We're not asking for them to enforce the law. It's targeted enforcement. And these are people that have committed crimes in your community.
The perception in our area is that you are targeting Garry McFadden, that you are targeting the DHS and the government is targeting because Vice President Pence talk about, then the UCIS director talk about, you come here and talk about,
Sure.
and then the candidate from Dan Bishop, right now elected congressman, did the same, and it's constant. It's constant, and it happens that he won the elections for 225 votes here. Everybody vote for him here in Charlotte.
So it's unfair to say that we're targeting the sheriff here in Mecklenburg County. We are actually targeting, and we're actually talking about sanctuary cities across the country. And we will continue to do so as a law enforcement agency to make sure that we continue to enforce the law smartly, compassionately, and as strategic as we can. And the reality is, here in Mecklenburg, we can be in the jails in a safe confinement, a safe setting, or we can be in your communities.
The voters decide that not.
And the reality is we will continue to be more in your communities, more in sanctuary cities, not just Mecklenburg, but in any sanctuary city. If we can't get the individual in a jail, then we're going to be knocking on doors in the community. It is safer for the officers, it is safer for the community, and it is safer for all if we work with the jails.
If you're not targeting Sheriff McFadden, the same happened in Wayne County with 287C program, and I've never seen a press release or the Sheriff of Wayne County names out on the news, outside on the news. So,
Even though
if
Wayne
you're not
County have
targeting
more,
Sheriff
Pardon me?
McFadden, how do you call that?
even though Wayne County have more retainers from ICE, we do not perceive that there is that much talking about Wayne County. We perceive that there's more talking about Mecklenburg County.
So we're
What's
here.
happening in Wayne County? 287C program out.
No,
So what is happening in Wayne County? Why you're not addressing the sheriff in Wayne County? Why
Well,
just Mecklenburg County?
We're here today. We continue to work in the community in Wade County. Our enforcement posture has not, it will continue to change county on county. If we cannot work in the jails, we will be in the communities. We were in the communities in Wade County making arrests as well. Today, we're in strategic locations across the country. I think we have people in Los Angeles today, San Francisco, Washington, Chicago, New York, Newark. The reality is this: it's got to stop. We have to figure out a way to enforce the law in a smart and compassionate way, and we target criminals. And most of our resources used to be spent in jails. We're starting to see that percentage decline. Now we're in the streets and we're in the communities. And I don't think if you ask most communities, they would prefer us in the communities, but the reality is that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to continue to enforce the law. It's our federal responsibility. It's a very difficult job, and we're going to do it well. We'd prefer to do it with partnerships and in the jail.
Mr. there any chance of any mediation? I
But,
mean,
what-
this war's been going on now for a year or two, and anybody trying to solve it? Or are we just gonna fight each other?
no, we continue to try to get creative and find ways, either through Congress or legislation, to solve this. But the reality is we've been enforcing immigration law for many, many years. We can all probably agree that there's probably room for immigration reform. But until then, we're going to enforce the laws
Yeah, but if
that
you're
Congress
targeting the
requires.
sheriff, if you're targeting
Sure.
the sheriff and the vice president targets the sheriff, and the candidate for Congress targets the sheriff, it's pretty obvious you're targeting the sheriff.
I think we're going
I
to.
don't hear any conversation on the other side. We really tried to sit down with him and he didn't wanna talk to us.
No, we have sat down here at the local level. We have, and many of our staff have sat down from very high leadership. And the reality is he's been very clear. He ran on, this was an issue he ran on, and he's not going to back away from it. And so the reality is he's backing away from his community. And the minute you do that as a law enforcement officer, I'm not sure you should be a law enforcement.
Well, the legal papers he says he needs, you say don't exist and he can't get them.
Well, so that's what he requires. We have exactly, and we work with Congress, we work with our attorneys, we have exactly what he needs. And if he doesn't want to honor a detainer and detain them for a minute past release, call us when he's gonna release him. Call us.
So he couldn't get something with a judge's name on it or a
We,
magistrate's on it?
we don't have, federal judges do not sign administrative warrants.
It's not possible to ask them to sign the order?
Pardon me?
It's not possible that you are in the federal level to ask the federal judges to ask for their order?
There are administrative orders, and federal judges do not sign the administrative orders.
Folks, we're a half hour in, so let's do one more question. I'll stick around and do housekeeping stuff, but let's do one more
Is
question.
there any way to change that, talking with Congress, I don't know, is there any way to change that so federal judges can sign?
That's gonna be a question that's better asked for our attorneys. But the reality is the workload for our federal judges, that's not something we use. Our judges, our administrative judges and our supervisor, immigration officers sign our federal warrants, our administrative warrants, sorry.
Could you elaborate on the pictures you have side by side?
So these are declined detainers nationwide. You can see some of the different cities. And these are people, and you can see we are able to arrest a few of them. The rest of them are at large in the communities across the country. These are people that would not be living in the communities preying on our neighbors if sheriffs would work with us. Same here. These are people here locally in Charlotte. The criminal records speak for themselves. Of the 5 that are on this page, we're only able to find 1. 4 of them are in their communities.
All of them were convicted, or there are people that were accused?
I can't speak to each criminal record, but
I'll shoot you the record.
Oh,
We've got this
Right.
all online. We'll give you the info.
thank you, Brian.
And this was part of the operation, this arrest that was mentioned?
correct. We looked, all these people on here, we looked for during this operation. And these were declined detainers. Obviously, we are successful in locating a few of them. Pardon me? It was just a cross-check. It's a normal ongoing operation. We do them a couple times a year. We do surges, no different than any local law enforcement agency that does surges. Okay?
All right, folks, I'll stick around. I know you got some housekeeping questions, and I'll give you the info on the links and stuff like.
Thank you.
So appreciate it. Can I keep that as well, because I've got some stats. So you had asked for
Yeah,
data.
You gave the number like 32 and then the
Yep.
number 12.
Yep,
Yeah.
so let me point to that, because obviously we've been pulling, because the White House event earlier today had the national number, and so so in Mecklenburg, this week,